it's a big story. And there's going to be, I'm sure, going to be some surprising things that we talk about and some questions that the audience is going to want to know about. And if there's a chat room there that you're getting questions, certainly feel free to, pop in the audience questions. So I think the Jesuits is one of those really interesting stories that needs to be learned. And for people who aren't familiar with my book, I did not put the Jesuits into the book. And I didn't include them for a reason, because it's a very divisive issue. It's a fairly large issue, and I didn't want to distract from the overall theme. Yeah. But what I did do is I put in all of the basis for the building into who creates the Jesuit orders. And so we need to understand that sort of from that kind of beginning. And I promise, for people who want information on the Jesuits, is that it will be in the sequel. I will put a section in there. I won't do like a whole book on Jesuits, but I'll connect it in terms of how it connects from prehistory to prophecy for the new book that's going to be coming out.
Can't wait.
So we need to understand that the Jesuits are a Masonic organization. And when I'm talking about Masonic, it's a little bit more from an ancient basis, even though they're a more recent contemporary organization like the Illuminati or like the Freemasons or like the Rosicrucians, but kind of sort of similar to that. One of those incredibly important organizations that are created after the fall of the Knights Templar, who are the modern wedge to all of the secret societies we understand today. And it was a very centralized organizational structure. I mean, they were the Royal Masons from ancient times. They were founded by royal bloodlines, and the ones that weren't physically, notably as being the sons of kings, as in de Paon and de Bouillon and Anjou from the Lorraine region, which is another interesting name as you come down with the double cross of Lorraine and the Habsburg Lorraine dynasty and the King of Jerusalem title that passes on through them, which is another show in itself. But we need to understand that the Templars were a organization that had a Christian veneer, and underneath they were like Cathars and Albigensians and Gnostics as we would understand them today.
Yeah.
And so were the Gnostic orders that had molded into Roman Catholicism. So whether or not you're talking about, as I mentioned, the Cistercians and the Benedictines or the Augustines, or you name the order that's in there, and even the more recent one that was created in the 1930s, Opus Dei, that's actually known in the cult as, Masonic Freemasonry for the Roman Catholic Church, right? It's actually is known as Masonic Freemasonry, or Catholic Freemasonry, I should say. And so Crusade, which the Templars were part of, right? Part of that religion at the core. That was at a time when the Gnostic religions were teetering at getting complete control and wiping out the Roman Catholic Church. So you can't have two primacy sort of religions that are sort of mortal enemies. One's going to win, one's going to lose. And so it could have just as easily gone the other way.
Yes.
But it didn't. And so when we look at understanding the Gnostic sort of concept, this is going to be very important when we get into talking about the Jesuits, but a little bit of more sort of setting the table in terms of who the Jesuits are. The monastic orders are a branch of the Essenes, and a lot of people are going to say, well, wait a minute. Essenes are, these guys are from the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they're very prophetic, and they're all of these good guys. Well, they're not. So they're polytheists. They worship fallen angels. I have a great document on this. I give you all of the historians on it and tell you about who they were. I give you the biblical references so you understand who they are. And they were very much an ascetic monastic order. The first monastic ascetic order in the West that was a model and built upon the Eastern monastic orders like in India, right? Like in the Buddhist temples and stuff. And so this is the organization that Freemasonry also takes much of their organizational structure and religion back to. This is a very, very, they have the same type of hand signals, the same gods, and you have ascetic rituals in Masonic rituals and organizations in the secret societies. So this is the group that is going to be how the monastic orders are going to be formed within the Catholic Church.
Mm.
And at the time of the homogenization of Mithraism and Sol Invictus, and probably some Egyptian religions, and maybe a few other spices put in there from polytheism into Constantine's statewide religion, which became known as Christianity, only the Roman form of Christianity.
Yes.
There's still this primacy going on. And even though they're doing things that are going to pacify the masses, it's not going to pacify the leaders of the religion. And so they have to go underground.
Yeah.
So what they do is they mold themselves into first the Roman Builders Guilds. And they are going to make themselves important, and they're going to build all of the churches, whether it's in the old Romanesque style or whether or not it's in the Gothic cathedral style that comes back from the Templars after excavating at the Temple of Jerusalem.
Mm.
And so as we look at this now, they've got these Gnostic orders that are molded in, and then they start to form ascetic monastic orders that, and there's almost like an endless list of them. But the Benedictines and the Cistercians become the most important ones because Saint Benedict, who's going to be the leader of the Benedictines at the time of the formation of the Templars, he's a Cistercian monk.
Yeah.
And he's a Gnostic, and he's the second most important person in the Templars at that time. He writes their constitution, and he does a letter and an argument at the Council of Troy that gets the papal bull in 1128, right? And so he's also a relative of several of the founding members of the Knights Templar.
Wow. Okay.
And he's the one who introduces the Red Cross from the ancient order of the Red Cross into the Knights Templar.
Okay.
And so you see this sort of wedding of its building blocks as to what's later going to form into the Jesuits later. Now, the thing you need to remember about the Templars before we move into the Jesuits is that their goal was they had several agendas within the church. One was to keep the message of the bloodlines and keep that secret and keep that protected. Mm-hmm. Another thing that they did was to develop the knowledge that they brought back out of Jerusalem. But they're in their constitution that they wrote, and written down according to the monk of Rosslyn. And there's a great document on this, and if people want it, I can send it to you. I've got it on a PDF. I also have a 3-part series on the Jesuits that'll walk you through some of the details. I just won't have time to get into on the minutiae on some of the dates and some of the organizations, because there's a lot in the formation. But the point of the matter here is that they were to create as their primary goal the New Babylon within the Roman Church, to prepare within the church to have that Gnostic religion come to a primacy, even though it was there for 600 years before, 700 years before. They wanted complete control all of the time if they could do it, but to have this universal Gnostic, what I call global Gnosticism, set for end-time Babylon and the world government, which were the Templars' dreams. Not only having the kingships and control of the army, but to get their bloodlines into the Catholic Church. And that's typically called the black nobility. It's the smaller black nobility, which is the same name that they'll use for the Rex Deus or Rex Deus, the kings of God, bloodlines of Greater Europe. But typically the black nobility is understood as the bloodlines that go back to Julius Caesar and to the original families who were, supplied all of the senators and were the educated elite, and who, and whose descendants later took over as Caesars, including Julius Caesar. And they take their bloodlines back to the original gods and their original Nephilim offspring, or Rephaim offspring after the flood. 17 is when this happens. Oh, and by the way, it is 1288 when you have the cutting of the elms. Not that long or much longer until the Templars are destroyed in 1307. So this deal doesn't happen. And so the invisible ones, they have to go underground. Of course, these are royal Masons. These are sons of kings. These are the ones who are leading, Gnostic Europe. And so they're going to continue with this Rosicrucian order. And it's going to, at a point in time, evolve into a different order, because the 33 is going to go up the ladder. They're going to have more families come along. So they're going to have the committee of 300 families below the 33. And of course, you have the 13 families above the 33. And then you're going to have the Rosicrucians, which is 50% pure blood at the top, 50% of ones that have come up through the ranks through Freemasonry, Rosicrucian, and Illuminati, with Illuminati being below the Rosicrucians. And so they're going to look for an opportunity then to get back into the Catholic Church in a way where they can have more control. And understand they've still got control over the Knights of St. John, which is important to understand, but they have a different agenda than they want for the Templars. And the Knights of St. John will have set up in Switzerland in the 1100s, and they have the White Cross, which is why the Swiss have the White Cross on their flag, and they actually start some banking routes there. And so in 1307, the King of France, or the King of Spain, I'm sorry, what he does is he forms an order called the Montesa Order. Which is, again, a Royal Masonic order. And that's formed to seize the assets of the Templars in Spain. And this is going to happen in a similar way in Portugal and in some other locations, because they don't want the Roman Church to get it. Now, this is an important order to remember, formation of the Jesuits. And this is 1307. And so in about 1523, you have Ignatius of Loyola come onto the scene, and he's getting visions of Mary, and he's being put on a mission by this vision of the Mother Mary, who is saying that you're going to be a soldier of Christ, and that you are going to do your work within the church to take it back to what it's supposed to be, to bring about this new Babylon. The whole group of original founders of the Jesuits were educated in the university, I think, a bibliothèque in Paris, and they formed were part of that secret society then, and they were studying the 7 liberal arts, but taking it to a completely different level. And so they're going to walk out of their education, and they're going to start the Jesuit order, and they're going to view the complete Bible and biblical doctrine through the 7 liberal arts, the 7 sacred sciences that were created by Enoch, son of Cain, to do 4 things. One is to lead people away from God. 2 is to not give God credit for anything. 3 is to degrade God. 4 is to honor their pantheon of gods. And so this is how they're going to interpret everything that's in the Bible in their order. And they're going to create a mystical society within the order.
Yes, indeed. And that is exactly what they did. I know that we are just talking about this in terms of history, because it is Jesuit scientists who created the science necessary for things like quantum physics, quantum theory. People don't realize that was created by a Jesuit scientist. People think Einstein was who is responsible for, quantum mechanics and quantum everything, but that's not true. That's only part of it. But I know that you are going to get into all of that here after we watch this very awesome clip.
The two top AIs have calculated similar chances of our extinction with timeframes and trigger points. What are the chances of humanity surviving AI?
Based on our current trajectory, considerably less than 50%. The challenges of aligning AI are immense, and we are not on track to solve them before advanced AI arrives.
It gave a detailed answer which I asked it to restate more bluntly.
I'd give humanity a 30% chance of surviving. We're in a car hurtling towards a cliff, and we're arguing about who gets to sit in the front seat.
And here's GPT-4o later in the video.
Analysing our current trajectory in more detail, I'd adjust the risk estimate higher to around 60 to 70%.
There are details below on how to verify these chats. AI agents are expected to arrive with GPT-5 later this summer. How will persistent memory and agentic AI affect the risks?
Wow, now that is scary, brother. I mean, that is what the AI itself is saying, and that is just the beginning. We're gonna watch another clip really quick and see what the experts on AI are saying about AI, and also about what is in store for this year, 2024. And then we are going to just open the floor up to you to just tell us all about AI. I know that you know a ton about AI and quantum mechanics, but here's back to the clip.
System that can remember and build upon its own experiences that can form long-term goals and strategies. That's a system that could outmaneuver any attempts at human oversight or intervention.
Could you and your friends tidy up here?
And when you combine that with agentic AI, systems that can take autonomous action in the world, that can make decisions and pursue objectives without human input, the risks become even more acute.
Please estimate the extinction risk within 2 years of agentic AI being deployed.
Based on current knowledge and expert opinions, 20 to 30%.
I think 2024 will be remembered as the year of the agents when we start seeing a lot of more autonomous systems. There's also obviously something we have to be careful with because it starts to feel less like just a new technology like electricity and more like a new species.
Wow. A new species indeed. And that is exactly what I believe we are seeing this year in 2024 and what we would be seeing for them to seemingly be able to give life unto the image of the beast. And I have created a short video that's only about 20 seconds long that we're going to play at the end of the episode when you finish breaking down AI to show people exactly what this might look like. And I think that they will enjoy it. I know you've already seen it, but they haven't. So I can't wait for them to see exactly what I'm talking about and what this may look like. All right, brother, I am going to turn this over to you to tell us what you know about AI.
Artificial intelligence it's connected to so many other things that are going on today. And because it's like we're seeing a convergence. So you've got, not only the amount of knowledge that's being developed and the amount of data and the computer systems and, into quantum computing, which is connected to AI. But you also have science being developed in all sorts of different areas. And we have all of this sort of converging and changing our lives. And it's all in pursuit of how do we create this demon thing, I think, and everybody who are very well versed in these very much high levels of quantum computing, artificial intelligence, interdimensional thinking, quantum physics, they are quite familiar with the understanding that this demon aspect is not just an allegory, because a lot of these people are initiated into the mysteries, and science is sort of that outward mask, like that theater mask or the crazy clown demon mask look, right? Because it's what's underneath. who they are and what they really believe. And I don't think most people understand that when we talk about AI, we need to talk about quantum mechanics, because people are thinking that quantum mechanics is going to do a certain amount of things to bring about the end time and to push into further science and things. And the sort of common thought is they need AI to partner with quantum mechanics and quantum computing, which they're starting to do, to complete it. And so they need to marry the two, which has a very interesting sort of connotation and understanding when you get to it. And if you think about where all of this sort of begins is because artificial intelligence goes deeper than just what we can see. It's going to get into the quantum sort of world. It's going to get into nanotechnology. It's going to get into the the whole aspect of quantum ideology. And if we understand that quantum mechanics has been working for, being put together for the last 100 years or so, and it's sort of like stepchild coming out of that, or sister is Sophia, or the artificial intelligence, then you won't be surprised to learn that, Wolfgang Pauli, who is considered the sort of pioneer of quantum mechanics. He was deeply into the occult, which is what I was referring to. And this is not uncommon. He's an individual that was into alchemy and a fan of Carl Jung, and totally into Eastern religions, and totally believe that if you want to understand this whole concept of artificial intelligence and quantum mechanics and quantum computing as sort of descends out of it, you have to understand Eastern mysticism. And then as that sort of progresses, you get pioneers like Niels Bohr and Werner Heisenberg, and both of them consulted the Vedas for better understanding. And in fact, they thought that their experiments were completely consistent with teachings out of the Vedas. And what they would say is that there's a unity, and I'm going to read this, there's a unity and a continuity of the Vedanta that is reflected in the unity and the continuity of wave mechanics. So they're basically saying they're talking and are kind of one of the same thing. And Heisenberg, he thought that quantum theory makes sense to people who read the Vedanta and consider Vedic thought. And that's exactly what he's referring to when he talks about that. And then as they get into this understanding of waves and particles, that's where you start to get into this whole understanding of the quantum world. And the idea of quantum entanglement is an idea that comes from their idea of knowledge and the knowledge of the universe, that is held at the quantum level. And you've heard that term come out of CERN, but this is a little bit different. And that's why there's a lot of dispute as to what the God particle is and whether or not they're actually trying to get, what happened at the point of the Big Bang, of the start of the universe, as science would call it. But what they're searching for is something called the Atma, ATMA or ATHMAN. No, ATMAN. And this is a invisible particle. And it doesn't merge with all of the other particles, but it sort of manipulates the particles. And this is typical Veda thought. And so what it is that it is the soul and the consciousness and the communicator of the instructions and the information and the decisions to all the particles in the universe, and quantum entanglement that goes out instantly. And it works through the particles like it avatars particle, which again is that Eastern Vedic sort of thought. And it is the true life force. And it is the undiscovered particle because they don't even know how to find it, but that's what they're kind of searching for as they get down to it. And it has different properties than other particles. And this is what is holding the knowledge of the universe and communicates it everywhere, which they'd love to be able to tap into. So if you want artificial intelligence that is going to go to a level beyond just being self-aware, it has to be able to tap into something that's limitless, right? Because it's going to be forever learning. So obviously, if you're going to want to expand quantum computing, you have to have it work in a manner that is more than just single task sort of purpose. Like it can do a ton of things, but single purpose, right? And it doesn't really do anything with that other than give you data and information. So when you hear about artificial intelligence being married up with CERN or with Google, and there's not that many of these very, very advanced quantum computers in the world, but wherever they're doing it, they're trying to match AI in there so that it can expand its ability than single source sort of inquiries, right? So it wants to be able to go into different dimensions, do things faster than anything that's ever been done before, but in a way that can do something with that information coming out and develop it. So that's where they want it to partner with AI. But you also want AI in the interdimension aspect if you're going to develop more than a self-aware individual. And I don't think it's just knowledge that makes you self-aware, but certainly this ability to become self-aware with intelligence and to be able to create things in terms of mentally and produce things out of nowhere like humans can, or at least out of the imaginations, or at least how we think we can do that. Let's at least put it that way, because I know some people will believe that we don't have any original thoughts and we don't create anything, but that's fine. But if you want to raise that to a level of godhood, to a level of technology that they had before the flood, to a level that could bring you to the point of rebelling against the omnipotent God of everything, you need access to this information in a self-aware manner that can work in multiple dimensions. So whether or not you are channeling a spirit or this other type of creation will channel a spirit, in this case, a demon, is it then really getting into the occult thought process of this knowledge of everything that's the Atman particle, or is it really just trying to find another way to communicate and be led and manipulated by demon spirits, right? And as we go back using the Greek understanding of it, this would go back to what they call hero worship. So after the hero, Titan, Nephilim, died, they would be afraid of this hero spirit and would come back to haunt its place of authority that it ruled from. And so the people used to do sacrifices and rituals to appease this god who had just lost his physical body, because his body died, but it's an immortal spirit that's not permitted to go to sleep and it's not permitted to go to heaven. And it has enmity for humankind. So you can imagine how upset it is, and that's why people have to worship them in the Greek times. And we understand that as those strange kind of gods, not the goat gods, but the evil spirits, where some of the idols were made for in the Old Testament, and as the same as those devils or those evil spirits that Jesus was referring to in the New Testament that thirst for a body, right? Because they need a body to interact with this world. Otherwise, they're just kind of in nowhere land. And Jesus actually calls it as thirsting for a body. So they are desperate to have a body all of the time. I believe they've made some contact with these things, not only through rituals, but through possibly some other experiments that they have the ability to manipulate, just like they might have the ability to manipulate an Ouija board, for example. Science stems out of the occult. So if you go back to the formation of modern science in about 1660 to 1662, some will date back even to the 1640s with the formation of the Royal Society. This is a group that is formed by the Rosicrucians and the Freemasons, right? And they're going to develop the 7 sacred sciences, which are the same sciences that were developed by Enoch, son of Cain, and his progeny of the Cain line, to a level that took the antediluvian world into the first apocalypse by water. And so science pays tribute to the Royal Society even to this day. And the Royal Society is still guiding everything. And what they're trying to do is develop the sciences to bring about the end time. They're trying to develop the technology to bring about the end time. They're trying to honor their pantheon of gods and dishonor the God of the Bible and not give God credit for anything and to slander God, and so that they can bring about this rendezvous with destiny in the end time. So everything is absolutely linked between science and polytheism, and people get confused because, well, they say, well, the seculars believe in evolution. That's pablum for the masses. That's all that's designed to do, is temporarily lead people away from God and prepare them to accept the other ideas afterwards. They'll discard that very, very soon, I think, because, you know, the higher level of scientists and the people and the physicists and the people in quantum computing is, you know, they just laugh at the evolution theory because it has no basis in that type of science. This is just a theory to deceive people. So if you understand that what's behind and guiding science, then you understand that they actually called themselves, as they formed the Royal Society, as the last of the sorcerers and the first of the scientists. And that's that transition as they take on that new mask into modern time. So it has to have an occult sort of guidance to it, because they're all occultists. As they go up into their secret societies and into their initiations, they're all going to be initiated into these Luciferian societies. And therefore, everything that they're going to do to name these things in science, they're also